Welcome to the data overview for the McClure Middle School English Language Arts Department. My name is Patrick Carter, and I'm a student in the Masters of Education in Instructional Technology program at Kennesaw State University. The purpose of this data overview is to examine the following topics: demographics of the McClure Middle School population over the past 3 years, analyze CCRPI scores and changes that have occurred while comparing to the state and district scores, look at teacher demographics, determine strengths of the McClure Middle School ELA department, and identify weaknesses of the McClure Middle School ELA department. As we move through the data overview, there are several guiding questions that will guide the presentation. What are the strengths of the McClure Middle School ELA instruction? What are the weaknesses of McClure Middle School's ELA instruction? What groups of students are in need of extra support with ELA instruction? What strategies and resources can teachers in the ELA department use to increase student performance? And how can teachers increase student proficiency levels on the Georgia milestones? The first piece of data that's going to be examined is the CCRPI over the past 3 years at McClure compared to those scores in the state of Georgia and District of Cobb County. McClure Middle School CCRPI score has been higher than both the state and district scores throughout the past 3 years. In 2016 to 2017, McClure's score was at an 87, increasing to 90.7 in 2017 to 2018, and then slightly dropping in 2018 to 2019 to a score of 88.1, but still being above both district and state scores. Enrollment of total students at McClure was 1,297 students in 2016 to 2017. Then in 2017 to 2018, the enrollment slightly dropped to 1,283 students. Then in the 2018 to 2019 school year, student enrollment numbers dropped to 1,162 students. Next, we look at the enrollment of students by gender. Gender is pretty split 50-50 between male and female students. Looking at the most recent year of data, McClure had 584 female students enrolled compared to 578 male students enrolled. When looking at the number of students enrolled by race and ethnicity, we see that the number of white students dropped from 788 students in 2016 to 2017 to 685 students in 2018 to 2019. The number of African American students also dropped, going from 247 students in 2016-17 to 194 students in the 2018-19 school year. Hispanic student enrollment has increased over the course of the 3-year period, going from 154 students in 2016-17 to 174 students in 2018 to 2019. The number of multiracial students has also increased, going from 38 students in 16-17 to 60 students in the 18-19 school year. Next, we examine the number of students enrolled that are identified as English language learners. The graph demonstrates an increase in the number of students enrolled that are English language learners, going from 40 total ELLs in 2016 to 2017 to 63 students in 2017 to 2018 to 75 students in the 2018 to 2019 school year. The students enrolled at McClure with disabilities has dropped between 2016 to 2017 school year to the 2018 to 2019 school year. The students in this population are served through IEPs and other special education services, going from 223 students in the 16-17 year to 198 total students with disabilities in the 18-19 school year. In 2016 to 2017, the number of students enrolled without disabilities was 1,074 students, then 1,058 students in 2017 to 2018, then finally to 964 students in 2018 to 2019. This drop is reflective of the overall drop in student enrollment at McClure over the 3-year period. Attendance trends have shown an increase in a higher percentage of total enrolled students missing 5 or fewer days of school. The school has tried to incentivize being in school by providing perfect attendance rewards throughout the school year. By 2018 to 2019, 54% of students missed 5 or fewer days compared to 52% in 2016 to 2017. However, the percentage of students missing more than 15 days did increase from 8.7% in 2016 to 2017 to 9% in 2018 to 2019. When looking at the attendance for the group of students without disabilities, we see that 54.3% of students missed less than 5 days in 2016 to 17, then increasing to 74% in 2018 to 2019. In 2016 to 17, 38% of students without disabilities missed between 6 to 15 days of school. Looking at the percentage of students without disabilities that miss greater than 15 days, that percentage went from 7.7% in 2016 to 17 and dropping slightly to 7% in 2018 to 2019. In examining the attendance trends of students with disabilities, we see that 40.8% of students with disabilities missed less than 5 days in 2016 to 17. 42% of students in this group missed between 6 to 15 days of school, while 17% missed greater than 15 days of school. When moving toward the 2018 to 2019 school year, 67% of students with disabilities missed less than 5 days, 24% missed between 6 to 15, and 9% in this group missed greater than 15 days of school. Looking at the current teacher demographics at McClure Middle School, 57 teachers are female and 15 are male, for a total of 72 teachers. When examining the race and ethnicity of teachers at McClure, there are 85% of teachers that are white and 15% are black. In terms of degree level of teachers at McClure, 42% of teachers have a bachelor's degree as their highest degree obtained, 33% have a master's, 24% a specialist, and 1% a doctorate. Looking at years of experience, we see that one teacher has less than 1 year experience, 23 have between 1 to 10 years experience, 25 teachers have between 11 to 20 years, 22 teachers have between 21 and 30 years, and one teacher has more than 30 years of experience. Now we look at milestone data for the McClure Middle School ELA department. In 2016 to 17, 10.4% of students tested performed at the beginning level of proficiency, 28.7% of students performed at the developing level, 45.5% performed at the proficient level, and 15.4% of students performed at the distinguished level. When we fast forward to the 2018 to 19 school year, the percentage of students performing at the beginning level decreased to 8.9%. 25.5% of students scored at the developing level, 49.7% of students performed at the proficient level, and 15.9% fell into the distinguished level. In the two highest proficiency levels, we see that percentages increased between the 2016 to 17 school year to the 2018 to 2019 school year. Next, we see the milestone data for the Cobb County School District. This data shows that in the most recent school year, McClure had a higher percentage of students that scored in the proficient and distinguished level compared to the Cobb County School District as a whole. As we move forward with our Georgia milestones data into different subgroups, we can see that in 2016 to 17, 14.5% of male students scored at the beginning level, 31.4% at the developing level, 41.7% were proficient, and 12.4% were distinguished. In the most recent year of data, 12.7% of male students performed at the beginning level, 29.9% at the developing level, 44.1% at the proficient level, and 13.3% at the distinguished level. Over the course of the 3-year period, there was an increase of male students at the distinguished level and a decrease of male students at the beginning level. Moving on to the female group of students, in 2016 to 17, 6.3% of female students performed at the beginning level, 25.9% at the developing level, 49.4% at the proficient level, and 18.5% at the distinguished level. In 2018 to 2019, the percentage of females at the beginning level decreased once again, dropping to 5.1%. 21.2% of females performed at the developing level, 55.2% at the proficient, and 18.5% at the distinguished level. Female students consistently scored better than the male students at McClure in the English Language Arts milestone. Over 18% of female students performed at the distinguished level, while the highest percentage of male students performing at that level was 13.3%. Next, we look at ELA milestone scores of students with disabilities. In the most recent year of data, we see that 28.6% of students with disabilities scored at the beginning level, 45.8% at the developing level, 22% at the proficient level, and 3.6% were at the distinguished level, a slight drop from the previous year. The data shows that at the proficient level, the percentage increased from year to year, while at the beginning level, we saw a decrease in the percentage, which indicates year-to-year growth. Next, we will look at the data of students at McCluer without disabilities. Looking at the 2018 to 19 school year, the most recent year of data, we see that 5.3% of students without disabilities were beginning, 21.8% were developing, 54.7% were proficient, and 18.2% were distinguished. Even though there was year-to-year growth at the proficient and distinguished level for students without disabilities, the highest percentage of students at the beginning level occurred in the most recent year of data, with 5.3% of students without disabilities scoring at the beginning level. Next, we will look specifically at the subgroup of economically disadvantaged students compared to not economically disadvantaged students in the most recent school year of data. In the 2018 to 19 school year, 19.5% of economically disadvantaged students scored at the beginning level on the ELA milestones, compared to 6.3% of students that are not economically disadvantaged. 31.4% of economically disadvantaged students scored at the developing level, compared to the 24.1% of students that are not economically disadvantaged. 44.3% of students that are economically disadvantaged scored proficiently, while 51% of students that are not economically disadvantaged did. Finally, 4.8% of students that are economically disadvantaged scored at the distinguished level, compared to the 18.6% of students that are not economically disadvantaged. It is clear that there is an achievement gap that exists between these two groups of students. We then look at the 2018 to 2019 McCluer Middle School milestone data by race and ethnicity. There is an achievement gap that exists between various race and ethnicity groups. We can see from the data that Asian and white students perform better on the milestone than Hispanic and Black students. The evidence shows that there is an achievement gap in terms of scores. 41.2% of Black students and 43.3% of Hispanic students scored below proficient, compared to the Asian and white students who only had 16.7% and 31.4% of students, respectively, fall below proficiency levels. There were various strengths that were outlined in this data overview for McCluer Middle School. First, McCluer's CCRPI score has been higher than the state and district for the past 3 years. 67% of the teachers have higher than a bachelor's degree. 48 of the 72 teachers have more than 10 years experience. McCluer also has a higher percentage of students in the proficient and distinguished categories on the ELA milestones compared to that of the district scores. Also, McCluer has a lower percentage of students in the beginning category compared to the district on the ELA milestones. In terms of opportunities for growth, McCluer's population of teachers lacks diversity, with 85% of the teaching staff being white. Economically disadvantaged students did not perform as well on the ELA milestones as students that are not economically disadvantaged. In the 2018 to 2019 school year, 24% of students with disabilities missed between 6 to 15 days of school, compared to 19% of students without disabilities. In the 2018 to 2019 school year, Black and Hispanic students had a higher number of students score in the beginning and developing levels of the ELA milestones compared to white and Asian students. In terms of next steps, we ask, how can we help to improve ELA instruction to raise milestone scores for the beginning and developing learners? What can be done to further incentivize attendance at McCluer Middle School? Specifically, how can we target the group of students missing greater than 15 days of school? Create an action plan that can be implemented in the ELA department to improve ELA milestone scores, specifically in the subgroups that were outlined in this presentation. And determine various strategies that teachers can implement in their classes to provide culturally responsive instruction to students. Thank you for watching this data overview presentation.